Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to Caleb Likes Books. Today, I have a special video I'm doing with Jonathan Cohn. And today, we're going to be talking about the Star Wars New Jedi Order series and ranking them, which will be fun. I just finished the series, as some of you may know. Really enjoyed it a lot. It was a lot of fun. And I figured that I would do a ranking to rank all of the books, obviously. But we thought we could do this video together because we have both read this series and have a lot of thoughts on it. So I thought it would be fun.
I actually read the series from 2017 to 2019, so it's been a while. It's been 5 years since I finished the series.
Hmm.
So it's not as quite as fresh as me. So if I get some of the details wrong, I apologize. And so really, I'm just looking back to which ones stood out in a good way, which ones stood out in a bad way, which ones kind of were just mediocre. There's the New Jedi Order has it all. And it has some of the highest points in Star Wars for me. It also has a few low points, not awful low, but some low points for me. And also, I just know that we've already talked off camera, very different rankings, and I know one of my rankings is going, a couple of my rankings are probably going to make some people really angry, but yours will make them happy. So stick around for all of Caleb's rankings as well, because you'll get angry at me and you'll be happy with Caleb. So just trust me
Yes.
on this.
Yes, I would definitely agree. Like some high points, some low points. I enjoyed all of them to some degree, but
Hmm.
I also like for me also it does depend on like memorability and thing. I did definitely take into account like how much I actually enjoyed it, but if it wasn't memorable, then it tends to be lower and things like that. Also, this will be spoilers allowed. I don't know how many spoilers we will get into, but just in case, there will be potentially spoilers
Oh
in
my goodness,
this.
Okay, if you don't know that one, you're in trouble for this video.
Also, we are collecting all of these into single entries, so it's duologies are together, trilogies are together. So my number 13 is going to be Dark Journey. Dark Journey would not be my least favorite if we were including individual books, but if we combine them all, it is. So Dark Journey is a decent book, I thought. But the main thing that brings it down in it is there just wasn't anything in it that really stuck with me. I enjoyed some of the character work and things like that, and it was still fun to read, as all the books are, I think. But out of all of them, it is the one where there's just nothing really that drew me into it in pretty much any way. So that's pretty much all I have to say about it.
The number 13 for me, I warned y'all, was going to be controversial and it's going to be Traitor. Most people I know list this as one of their favorites in the New Jedi Order. And for some people I know, it's their favorite Star Wars book. For my brother-in-law who got me into Star Wars books, this is his favorite Star Wars book. And for me, it was Matthew Stover's writing style just does not connect. I've tried most of his books, just none of them really connect with me. And I didn't like the darker turn that it took. I didn't like the story with Vergere on Coruscant, with Jason, and with all the whole Yuuzhan Vong storyline on Coruscant. It just didn't connect with me at all, which is why it is my number 13. And I know that's controversial.
Well, that's the video. Now that all of you are everyone's gonna hate you. No. From what I have seen, most people do consider that their favorite, but I think for your taste, it makes sense, is
Mhm.
what I'll say about that. I will reserve my thoughts on the book till much later in the video. So my number 12 is going to be Balance Point,
Mm.
which I have very similar thoughts to Journey in that there's not much about it that was memorable to me, but I do remember liking the characters, and I did really like the ending. The ending with especially with Anakin Solo and what he was doing with like Center Point. I believe this is the book with that. And things like that. I really enjoyed the end of this book and the climax of it, but it's just the rest of it didn't really pull me in that much. And so that is pretty much like it's one of those books where it just didn't stick with me. And even when I read it, both this and Dark Journey, neither of them really had much going for them. And these are some of the very, very few New Jedi Order books where I would say that's the case.
I'll reserve my thoughts on balance for much later. My number 12 is going to be the Force Heretic trilogy by Sean Williams and Shane Dix. We have Remnant, Refugee, and the third book, Reunion. And this is a trilogy that just felt like it was a little bit too padded out we had had duologies in the series, but this is the only trilogy in the series, and I think it was unnecessary to make it a full trilogy. I think that it should have been shortened quite a bit. And I thought the third book was the best of the three. And the first book and second book had elements that I enjoyed a lot. But as a whole, when I'm looking back at them, I'm like, this is the trilogy that I would like. If I was going to do a reread, I would desire to skip because I'm like, I just want to get to maybe the third book in the trilogy. So those are my thoughts on it.
Well, that is good timing because my number 11 is Force Heretic.
Okay, similar placement finally.
Yes. So if I were to individually rank these books, Force Heretic 1 and 2 would be at the bottom. But like you said, Force Heretic 3 is the best of the trilogy. I would actually put Force Heretic 3 not in my like top five, but definitely like in that 5 to 10 space. I really like Force Heretic 3. But Force Heretic 1 and 2 just didn't have much. I enjoyed the Tahiri storyline in all three of these books, actually. They made her one of my favorite characters. But the first two had some good setups that that was the thing that I was interested in with them was the setups, and then the third book kind of followed through on them, and that's why that one was my favorite. And so and also like the writing style, like I'm one of those people who much prefers to have chapters rather than no chapters, and
Mhm.
like it helps me differentiate like the switching povs or switching locations or whatever, and so it just made it a little bit harder for me to follow. So just in almost every way it didn't work as well for me, but I do love the third book, which is why it's not at the bottom.
I understand. My number 11 is going to be Destiny's Way. And of all the hardcovers, because they were, some of the books were released in hardcovers and some of them were released in paperbacks originally. Of the hardcovers, this was my least favorite of them because it wasn't quite as memorable. We were just coming off of the huge high of Star by Star, and we were just coming up. We were almost to the point where we were at the Unifying Force, and so you had these two epic hardcovers, and then this one there was some big action stuff happening in it, but it just didn't stand out or anything. So it's a fine book. I did like Jason and Verger's story in this book a little bit more than I did in Trader, which is probably why I would elevate it a little bit.
Well, Destiny's Way is a bit higher for me,
Hmm.
but I would say of the hardcovers, it is one of the lesser ones, even though I still really like it.
Hmm.
So I guess I'll wait on that for a little bit. But my number 10 is going to go to one that I also kind of wish I could have a little bit higher. But it's like from this point on, everything is at least like really good.
Hmm.
For me, the bottom three are all like just decent, whereas everything here on out is like really good. So it's kind of hard to rank them. But my number 10 is going to go to the Dark Tide duology, which is really early in the series. And again, the big thing that brings these down is I didn't feel like there was a lot that I found memorable. But on the flip side of that, I think they were really like well done. I really enjoyed reading them. And I'm sure part of it is because I read the first three books of New Jedi Order in 2021, and I read the rest of the series starting in 2023. So I'm sure that part of the memorability factor is that it was just so long in between. There was some good stuff in there that I liked, but I just didn't, as time has gone on, they have been some of the less memorable ones for me. But I do really like them. There was some really cool action scenes, some cool like discussion, like dialogues and stuff like that. Also, in my opinion, some of the best covers in the series, which I guess counts for something. But yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on those ones.
So my number 10 is a different duology. My number 10 is the Agents of Chaos duology. You have the first book, Hero's Trial, and the second book, Jedi Eclipse. I really enjoyed the first book. I remember the whole Han Solo and Verger storyline being really fascinating, and him learning about her as they're going on their story here was really interesting. And then Eclipse just didn't work for me. Just was not like and as entertaining. And so the first book, on its own would be very high up in this, but because of the second book, it kind of goes down into the middle, and my number 10. So
Well, once again, my number 9 is Agents of Chaos. This one, the only reason I put it up above Dark Tide is for pretty much the exact reasons you said. I think the second book's like one of the more okay ones, but
Hmm.
I love the first book
Yep.
mainly because of how it portrays Han's grief after the loss of Chewbacca.
Yep.
I thought that was really powerfully done.
Mhm.
And that's like the one reason it goes above Dark Tide. I really liked the first one a lot. I thought it was a lot of fun, and I loved how it dove into Han's like psyche after the events of Vector Prime because it'd been a few books since then. So it was nice to finally get that. But the second one, like I liked it, but it was again, if I were individually ranking them, it'd be pretty close to the bottom. So it's a good duology. I'd put it about equal with Dark Tide, but I give it the edge because I think Dark Tide are both about equal
Mhm.
in terms of like how much I like them, whereas Agents of Chaos has a book that I really, really like.
I gotcha. My number nine is going to be The Final Prophecy by Greg Keyes. This is a very good book. I really like what it's doing with setting the pieces on the board before the epic finale. And I think that Greg Keyes did a great job. And I think it is criminal that he never got a hardcover in Star
Mm.
Wars, that he only got three paperbacks, because he is, I think, a great writer, as we'll
I
find
have
out with
loved
later
everything
rankings.
of his that I've read.
Yes, and he's a great guy. I met him at Dragon Con last year. But this book, I really like what it does with tying up stuff from the Force Heretic trilogy. I liked what it did with moving Zenoma Sakat. I liked what it did with kind of also seeing, hey, where is everybody else? We spent all this time on Zenoma Sakat. Where is everybody else? In the middle of this Yuuzhan Vong conflict. And so and also just we were talking about how I was talking earlier how Matthew Stover's writing style just doesn't work for me. Greg Keyes does. I every time I read his books, I really enjoy his writing style. It just clicks for me.
Yes. I agree with everything you just said, but I will hold off because once again, bit of a little bit of a disagreement in placement there. Number 8 for me would be Enemy Lines duology, which also is one that I really like. And I this is another one I kind of expected to be higher than it is. I think these are some of the most really solid, enjoyable books in the series. It's
Mhm.
just that there's so many amazing books that go above it. But I really like these a lot as well. Um, but again, they're kind of brought down mainly for the memorability factor. I just don't think about them as much as some of the other ones, but I think they're very entertaining, very fun to read. I loved the storyline of like Luke and Mara Jade and them on doing their thing, the mission they went on, and things like that. So it was a good duology for sure, very good duology. And I would actually say this earlier. I said that Dark Tide is the point where the series turns like really good. This is the point where I'd say it turns really great. And so from here on out is like amazing books, I think. So that's my number 8.
My number eight is gonna be Vector Prime, which I went in knowing the big spoiler about Chewie. I think most people
Me
have gone
too.
into this one because of that. It's one of those seminal moments in Star Wars fandom. If you did not go in knowing about that, that's impressive. But
Mm.
I knew that that was the goal, and so because of that, I thought it was so interesting that this was a series designed to take risks, and also that it was a series designed to be different. It's not the Rebellion versus the Empire, or the New Republic versus the Empire type story that we had gotten in all the Bantam books. This is we're introducing a new threat. Also, this book really set the Solo children and the whole Young Jedi Knights kids as the focus of the series, and I thought that's really cool that they can do that because I'm a huge fan of the Young Jedi Knights, as will be evidenced by some of the later books in my ranking. Because of that, but the because of this, like the decisions made, I think that there were some very good decisions. Now, cover art, this is some weird cover art. Don't know what they were thinking here, but as a book, this is a very good book. So that's why it's my number eight.
Mm. To make a point about the cover art, I feel like New Jedi Order tends to go between really excellent cover art and really not excellent cover art. There's like
I
no in
agree. There are some great ones and there are some not so great
but
ones.
if you don't like the main covers, go look up the Japanese covers because those are really good.
Those
I
are
wish
really
we got
good.
covers,
I agree.
but yeah. So once again, my number 7 is Vector Prime. So great start to the series, and obviously, I think it only gets better from here because I guess both of us do because we both have it kind of middle of the ranking. A great start to the series. Again, that the moment Chewie getting crushed by the moon. Uh, I also knew going in, but I think that it's a testament to how well it's done that it still got me. But even besides that, I think that's the thing that really stands out to people about this book. But I think even besides that, it's a very, very good setup. The way that it introduces the Yuuzhan Vong is really cool, and it's just a great start to the series overall. Very memorable, and especially because of the Chewie moment. But yeah, I really like this one, and it's again one that I wish I could have higher, but there's just so many other good books, so it just gets pushed lower than I would like it to be. So
And we're getting into the top seven for me are like excellent to top tier Star Wars.
mhm.
So I'm super excited for this. My number seven is going to be Dark Journey, which you all also talked about. I really liked the story of Jaina in this book. I really enjoyed the whole Hapes Consortium plot here. I felt like it was an extended story of like what we would get in the Young Jedi Knights books. You know, it's about double the length of a Young Jedi Knights books word count wise, but it still felt like that intrinsically, and I really liked that. And complementing it to Trader, which in design of the covers and the way they marketed them, this is like the opposite. Trader focuses on Jason. Dark Journey focuses on Jaina. I really liked the story that this told. It was a lot more fun. It was a lot more lighthearted, and also gave her an opportunity to shine as a character. So that's why I really like Dark Journey as my number seven.
Even though I had that one at the bottom of my list, I do think that it did do a good job with Jaina. Jaina of the solo kids was the only one, like I always liked all of the solo kids, but she's the only one that never truly shined for me in this series.
Mhm.
I loved Anakin. I grew to love Jason, but Jaina's the only one that really didn't. But I will say that I loved the way that this book handled her, and I think that was the one really good thing about it for me.
There was
So,
I'll be interested to see when you read The Young Jedi Knights because there is a marked turn in the writing between how Jason is as a kid in the Young Jedi Knights series and the way he's portrayed here in the New Jedi Order. Jaina is pretty much the same. And
mm,
Anakin is like he's older, but it seems natural. Jason, it was just kind of whoa, it was jarring in Vector Prime reading Jason's character journey. And it's a good character journey, but it's jarring.
yeah, I might read them someday. Just kind of depends if I can find them anywhere.
Mm.
So we'll see. My number 6, again, kind of like you said, where number 7 is where it turns to truly amazing. It's kind of the same for me. So number 6 for me is going to be Destiny's Way, which
Mhm.
once again, I wish I could have it higher because when I first read it, I was like, this is like top 2 books in the series. And now it's just gotten pushed down over time. But this is one that I really liked as well. I love the way that it followed up on Trader with Jason and Vergier, and things like that. And I love Vergier's like, this is the book where she dies and everything. I thought that was very well done. That kind of hit me really well. And it was just a lot of fun to read. This out of all of the books is one of the ones where it was just had the most entertainment value to me, where I just had a really fun time reading it. And then it also had the gut punch moments like Vergier and things like that. And also getting to see characters getting reunited was really nice. Jason's been out of the loop compared to he's been out for a while with the other characters. He hasn't been with them, so it's nice to see everyone reunited. So it's just a really solid one all around. I really enjoyed it. Wish I could have it higher, but again, there's so many amazing books that it just gets pushed down over time.
Yeah, my number six is going to be the Unifying Force, which is the epic conclusion to the series, and it has the single most cinematic moment in the series for me, which is the moment where Zenoma Sakat just enters the upper atmosphere of Coruscant, and everybody notices that that it's there, and it's just like this shock moment. It's like, to me, when I was reading it and I visualized it, it felt like when Gandalf arrives with the Rohirrim in the end of the Two Towers, like just that, the cavalry has arrived moment, and I just love that moment. But also just the book, it is a satisfying ending to a 19 book series, which is hard to do. It is very hard to pay off all of it. It's one of the longer books in the series because of that, because
Mm.
they had to really tie up quite a lot of storylines. But I thought it was just an excellent ending. So that's why I put it as my number 6.
Well, once again, we're pretty much in agreement. My number five is Unifying Force. So, like you said, super satisfying. And I was worried going into I was excited, obviously, but I was also worried because I was like, it's a 19 book series. How well are they really going to wrap it up?
Mhm.
But I think it was done very well. I think the early portions of the book were like pretty, they were good, but it wasn't quite there for me. But like the climax of the book, like the entire second half of the book, I think was amazing. Basically, from the moment Sonoma Sakat arrives at Coruscant onwards, is just amazing. Very satisfying, very like epic feeling. A lot of really good character moments, a lot of good just moments in general, different twists and turns, things going on with the Yuuzhan Vong with Shimra and Onimi, or however you say his name, and things like that. A lot of good twists towards the end of it, and just the feeling of cohesion that it has with the rest of the series was something I was really impressed by because it had references to other moments. It felt like it really kind of was an ending that took everything else into account. And also, I love the end scene that ends on Kashyyyk with Chewbacca's family, which I thought was just such a perfect end to the series. And so I really like Unifying Force. Again, wish I could have it higher, but I think it did a really good job of being a great ending.
My number 5 is going to be the Dark Tide duology. This is going to be one of many such examples in my top 5 of I get why other people would rank it lower, but it's this duology just works for me. I love Mike Stackpole's writing style. It felt like the perfect marriage of the X-Wing books and the New Jedi Order style and the Young Jedi Knight storyline. He gets a scope of like a larger scope than say Vector Prime had, but it's still not too huge. And it felt like the two books flowed together really well. There are separate plots for these two books, but it almost felt like it could have been two parts of the same book, which is why they called it a duology. And this, by the way, this you mentioned cover art earlier. This is the cover art that I think is just really excellent. This when the series shines was when it looks like this. But yeah, like I know you had it lower, but for me, it's just it works for me so well, and it's one of the ones I have fond memories. I remember specifically where I was at reading these, and I just have such fond memories of them.
Yes, I do agree they go together really well. I think there may be two of the most like in terms of the duologies,
Yeah,
maybe some of the most cohesive feeling. Like
exactly.
other ones, like Agents of Chaos, like kind of
Mhm.
have a different focus for each book. Same thing, kind of with the I'm already forgetting the name of it.
The Enemy Lines books and the Edge of
Yeah,
Victory
like
books.
some of them have different focuses in each book, whereas that one felt like it could have been like it really felt like one story, which I appreciated. And
Hmm.
yeah, I just happened to have it lower, but it is good. I still enjoyed it. So my number four is going to be the Edge of Victory duology,
Mm.
which I really love. The first book, especially, the second book's also really good. This is one where I think the duology, both books are really, really good. And one of them just happens to be like a top three, top five book in the series. But I loved the first book. I loved Anakin Solo. This is the book where Anakin Solo really started to connect with me, which was really unkind of them considering what happened in the next book. But I loved him in this book and his interactions with like some of the Yuuzhan Vong characters, and just one of those books that I again just had a lot of fun reading. Very entertaining and really good character work. And I really just like that it made me really connect with. This was the first time in the series where I really started to connect with the characters. Like I enjoyed the characters in the previous books, but none of them were like, I love this character, especially the solo kids. And this was the first one where that really happened for me. And like I said, kind of mean of them to do that, but I'm glad that they did.
My number 4 is going to be Star by Star. And this
Mm.
is in my opinion, when the series reaches its apex of epicness and is also, I think, the major turning point in the series. Before this, it was a new, refreshing take on the series that had taken risks, a la killing Chewie, but it was still not incredibly dangerous, and it was still kind of following some of the general rules of the series, or I should say, of how the Star Wars publishing had been previously. This is the book where, Coruscant falls in this book. This is the book where you're seeing these epic battles, but happen in multiple places. You have all the kids being sent off separately from the parents on this mission. You have, the death of Anakin Solo, which is just so heartbreaking in the series. And it was you thought you cried for Chewbacca. Oh my goodness, it's going to be even worse here. Like that's just one of the things they did really well here. And Troy Denning, just I mean, this is, I think, one of his first, if not his first Star Wars book that he wrote. And man, he poured so much into this book. And it just, as I said before, this is the definition of epic in the series. It's also really long.
So I agree with pretty much everything you just said, but I still got a couple minutes before I talk about Star by Star, so I will reserve. But I agree with basically everything you said. So, but my number three is going to be one that I alluded to earlier that I was surprised about, which is Final Prophecy. I
Really?
didn't, yes, I didn't expect that the second to last book would be such a favorite. I figured it'd just be like, oh, this is the lead up to the last book. It'll just be like a good, solid book. But I really liked Final Prophecy. The stuff that wasn't on Zonoma Sakat, I didn't as much care for. Although it was nice to see that. But the thing that I really liked was seeing Zonoma Sakat, the things going on there. I loved getting the heroes and the villains, even though they may have had certain motives that others weren't aware of. I loved seeing them work together and
Mhm.
talking together a lot and things like that. And it was just a really fun book again. And it just had a lot of stuff that I really liked in it. I loved the different dialogues that were going on. And you had stuff with Tahiri. It followed up the final prop or the Force Heretic books really well, and was kind of a nice bridge between those and the last book, and kind of just hinted towards the things to come, which I really enjoyed. I just liked it a lot. I thought it was a lot of fun. I really loved the Yuuzhan Vong storyline. This was one of the strongest Yuuzhan Vong storylines in the series for me in this book specifically.
My number three is one that is just like my top three are all very special to me for different reasons. But my number three is the Edge of Victory duology. You have Conquest and you have Rebirth. And I really enjoyed Rebirth. It's a really fun book. But the reason this ranks so high is purely because of Conquest. This is a top tier Star Wars book for me. I love everything about this book. The whole storyline of Anakin going back and trying to rescue his friends, particularly Tiri, and trying to kind of be the save the day type thing. And you have like a little adventure. It's getting a taste of, oh, this is what it's like. The stories are like when Luke, Han, and Leia aren't the main heroes in the books, because Luke, Han, and Leia had been very much present in the previous installments up to this point. And I think that this is the reason that Star by Star and killing Anakin worked off so well, is because
Mm-hmm.
boy, do you connect so much with him in this book alone. And just I felt so emotionally invested in his storyline and all the tropes involved. And just like as just an individual book, I consider this to be like just a solidly, just this is how you write Star Wars. Like the adventure, the themes, the heroics, everything. It just works so well. So that's why Edge of Victory is my number three.
Yes, definitely agree with all of that. So it's a great duology. And like you said, the way the duology happened, it made Star by Star hit even harder for sure. So appropriately, my number two is Star by Star. Like I said, agree with like everything you said. It feels big, it feels epic. It's the turning point. It's where, like you said, the first part of the series, like you had that one big moment at the beginning, but then it was like, okay, things are okay for a while. Like there's still war, but things are fine. And then Star by Star is almost like, in some ways, like if you think of New Jedi Order as a trilogy, as I've seen some people do, of like Vector Prime is the first one, and then Star by Star is the middle one, and then
Hmm.
Unifying Force is the end. It's
Yep.
very much like the Empire Strikes Back, to go with the Star Wars analogy, where it ends with the kind of all hope is lost moment.
Yep.
Which I really like, with Coruscant falling and everything, and then of course you have Anakin dying, which I knew was coming at some point. That is something I'd had spoiled, but I didn't know when. And when
Hmm.
it did happen, I cried a bit, and it really hit hard. And it was just such a good book. Definite high point in the series. Just everything about it worked so well for me, and it is definitely, I think, one of the best books in the series for sure.
I remember, when we were getting around to that point in our friend group, the Awkward Silence Gang, when we would have our discussions, we would what kind of walk on eggshells because we were like, does he know about this part? What does he know? What does he not know? And so we had to be careful about what we might potentially spoil. And I remember one time, one of our friends, Alex, he and I were talking about, we really, really wanted to talk about something, so we had to hop on a separate chat because we were like, we really do not want to spoil it for Caleb. And I was specifically talking about the stuff that happened in Star by Star. My number two is gonna be the other one of the other placements that the pitchforks are gonna come for me because I loved Balance Point. I loved Balance Point. So one of the things that this book does is I love the way this portrays the relationship, the dynamic between Luke and Mara Jade. I of course, some of my favorite Star Wars books ever are the Hand of Thrawn duology, which is like kind of setting up the romance, but Tim Zahn romance is not his best thing. And I think that Kathy Tyers, she just did a tremendous job writing their connection to this book. This is the one where they find out that Mara's pregnant, and I thought that Kathy just did an excellent job with that here. I thought that Jason's character development. This is when I started to think, okay, I'm okay with where they're taking Jason in this book. Like I actually really liked his character development in here. I also liked the adventure with Han and Leia and the whole Duros plot lines. So I know that this is not as epic in scope as Star by Star. It's not as shocking as Vector Prime. It is not as satisfying even as Unifying Force. But what it did do, it clicked with me, which is why it's my number two.
Hmm. I do think that the Luke and Mara were good in that one for sure. So I can agree with that at least. I honestly, from what we had talked about, I expected that to be your number one.
No,
So, and I
no.
can't remember what we haven't hit yet. So I'm surprised. There's so many books in the series; it's hard to remember what we haven't talked about. But speaking of great disagreements, we mentioned earlier that we have a single big disagreement
Yep.
because my number one is Traitor. This seems to be the fan favorite of the series, which obviously I agree with. But I love everything about this book. It's very dark, which I enjoy. It goes a lot into the philosophy behind the Force, which is like one of my favorite things in any Star Wars thing ever. I love the dynamic between Jason and Vergier and the way that she kind of instructs him in a way, like trying to get him to really think about the Force and the morality of it, and the why behind what you do, kind of, and things like that. And then you have the end of the book. Ganner Rhysode was a character that I always like. I enjoyed him on the page, but he never like really clicked with me, kind of like I was talking about earlier. But the final stand of Ganner Rhysode also is one of those moments that had me teary eyed because I thought it was so well done. And I just loved everything about it. I think for you, like I said, it makes sense, taste wise. I think it makes sense for this to be your least favorite, and I think it makes sense for it to be my favorite.
Yep.
But yeah, I love this book. It is arguably my favorite Star Wars book of all time. Maybe it's hard to pick one, but it's definitely high on that list. I really loved it a lot. I loved everything about it, like I said. So,
Well, one of the interesting things about Trader is not only was it the writing style difference because Matt Stover just has such a unique
mm,
and specific way of writing, and it's not just that the story it did with Jason and Verger and with the Force, but also the fact that this was the first Star Wars book that had no on-screen characters in it. We had
Hmm.
had a Star Wars book without Luke or a Star Wars book without like Han and Leia or something, but this was the first Star Wars book that was just completely book created characters. And that was,
That never
at the
even occurred
time,
to me.
that was
Wow.
a bold move on the publishing team that they're like, yeah, you are so invested in this. You don't need the main characters in this book. I will give the book credit for that because that was a bold move on their part.
Yeah, I never
So,
even realized that. That's really cool, actually.
yeah, yeah. So my number one has to be Rogue Planet. I'm just kidding. No, no. My number one New Jedi Order book is the Rebel Dream and Rebel Stand from the Enemy Lines duology. So specifically, I enjoyed Rebel Stand quite a lot. The kind of the surveillance that happens in this book. I also really
Mm.
like a lot of the Jaina and Jagged Fell stuff because there are some interesting stuff that happens later in the series with Jaina and Jagged Fell that was set up here, and I'm actually appreciative that it was set up here. Although I will forever be a Zek and Jaina shipper, but that yeah. But the reason this is number one is because of Rebel Dream. Oh my goodness, this book blew my mind when I first read it. What Aaron Alston did with turning the book into basically kind of a World War II style story, he has so many references to World War II battles. He has so many strategic things that happen, reframing it so that they decide, okay, we are no longer going to be operating as if we are the New Republic. We're going to operate as if the New Republic's gone. We're going to be kind of a rebellion again, kind of like a resistance from the sequels, although I think this works much better. But the we are going to reframe the question. We are going to come about this from a very different angle, and they start winning battles against the Yuuzhan Vong in this book, and they start using Rogue Squadron and Wraith Squadron properly, and they start dealing with the whole Bothawai stuff, and just this book was like a love letter to World War II books and movies and World War II battles. And I just love the way that Aaron Alston has the lighter writing style while at the same time has, a feeling of Star Wars to it. And it also brought that something new. I mean, his other Star Wars books certainly had the Star Wars battles, but this just the World War II love letter in this I thought was really good.
Hmm. Well, I didn't expect that to be your number one, but there we go.
Yeah.
And I think also that kind of makes sense for you as the big history fan. So
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
I suppose that makes sense. So I guess there's our ranking. Let us know in the comments what yours is, who you agree with more or disagree with
And why you
more.
hate Jonathan now.
Yes.
And if you want to go to my channel and start just hate commenting on my stuff saying your New Jedi Order ranking sucks, you can do
Yeah,
that.
there we go. You all go do that. So if
Caleb does it
you would,
enough.
if you guys would like to check out Jonathan's channel, I'd highly recommend it. He does some great stuff over there. If I remember to, I will link it in the description. But go check out his channel. He does some great stuff. And thank you, Jonathan, for doing this with me. It was a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, it was my pleasure. And y'all, don't just check out my channel. If this is your first time seeing Caleb's, make sure you subscribe to his channel too.
Yes. So thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. So that's it for today. So I will see you all next time.